Good morning, Cerebral football fans. My name is Steve Hyder. This is Gate City, a sports media company. In today's topic, I want to talk about the Philadelphia Eagles front office members getting interviewed across the NFL for open general manager (GM) positions, because it's happening. A lot of our front office members are being sought after for these opening positions that are coming, that are starting to be revealed now. And the biggest one so far has been the Minnesota Vikings, to where they have now interviewed or requested an interview for two separate members of our front office. And I'm going to get in a little bit about the structure of the front office, who some of these key players are, and could we see some more? Like, is there any surprises some of these guys aren't getting interviews? All that, right? So to begin with, let's just kind of have a very basic conversation about the structure of our front office and kind of like, call a spade, if you will, which is, I know at times we're not the most favorable towards our front office, and maybe we don't necessarily give them the full respect that they deserve. But in the same breath, like, clearly the league looks at our front office and says, yeah, we want a part of that. We want a piece of what's going on there with the Philadelphia Eagles front office, because I got to be honest, their track record is pretty good when you look over the past 25 years. And we need somebody that can bring that kind of stability to our organization. So to begin with, Catherine Reich, if you guys remember, she was at the time that we made the hire or the promotion. I think it was a hire, not a promotion per se. We elevated her to the VP of football operations, which was a very big advancement for Catherine Reich. And to be quite honest, Catherine Reich, it made a ton of noise because it's a female executive inside of NFL, front offices here. So of course that made some noise. I'll be honest with you, it's kind of hard to define what the VP of football operations does. That's not just an easy topic. That's not just an easy discussion to have, guys, because they like the operations manager of any department wears multiple hats, right? It doesn't change just because they're in the NFL. It doesn't matter where they are. NFL, the Marriott. It doesn't matter where you are. If you're the VP of operations, like, you're going to have a lot of hats you got to wear. So Catherine does a lot of things like scheduling and setting up, practice times and all that kind of stuff across the league. I mean, she wears many hats for what she does for the Philadelphia Eagles. The other person who received an interview from the Minnesota Vikings, and I think this one is a more significant one in terms of what they do from a football aspect, just because I do think this is one of Howie's right-hand people, which is Brandon Brown. He's one of our two directors of player personnel, commonly referred to or affectionately referred to by front offices as the DOPP. So Brandon Brown's a really intriguing guy because this is a former collegiate player. He played at Fordham University. He was a defensive back there. He spent a lot of time in scouting. He started scouting in college. He was at Boston College before making his rounds and, doing the regional scouting stuff with the Colts and things. He got called up to Philadelphia, guys, and started working inside of, advanced scouting, and then, worked as kind of like the VP or an assistant to pro scout, and then became our director of pro scouting. What's significant about Brandon Brown is this is a lawyer. He's a Juris Doctorate, okay? He's a lawyer with a JD degree that has football playing experience. When you look at the director of player personnel, they normally have two very important roles for a football team, all right? Role number one for a DOPP is that oftentimes one of the job titles they can do, just depending on the structure of the front office, they can handle contracts. And since this young man does have a background in finance, has a Juris Doctorate, I would not doubt if he is not intricate to Howie Roseman's plans and what he does with contract structures and things like that. The other thing and the other side of things that they do there is that they provide a ton of advanced scouting at the NFL level. So they help come up with strategy, game plans. They look at the rest of the teams across the league. They probably come up with a list of guys that could be potentially cut, moved, all that kind of stuff. So they're, obviously with him being a former pro scout, being the director of pro scouting, that, you can see kind of the twofold nature of what he does there. So simply put, guys, two of our front office members are already receiving interviews, in Catherine Reich and then Brandon Brown. Brandon Brown being one that I'm a little bit more familiar with, to be quite honest, guys. I want to talk about so far who hasn't received interviews, whether or not they may or may not. It's hard to predict that kind of thing, but I'll talk from a general standpoint about like what they do for the organization, guys. And if you look at operations, there's only really two names I could think of, or at least I feel comfortable enough projecting, because I don't know enough about the other people to project what they do and how vital and important in a way they're viewed across the league. But the one big name, and you guys all know this name of recent because it's been mentioned so much, is Alec Calabi. He's the other person from operations, Catherine Reich being one who's currently got an interview. But I'm a little surprised about Alec Calabi because Alec Calabi's been with the Eagles for the duration of his career. And maybe I'm wrong and there is some interest there, and maybe he will get an interview later, but I hadn't heard anything about Alec Calabi. And what you guys might know Alec Calabi from, or what you might remember him from, is that Alec Calabi, that's the analytics guy. Alec Calabi is your numbers guy. That's basically what he did. He's the VP of operations and strategy. So you might ask, like, Gate, that's a fancy sounding title. What does that mean in plain language? You're not going to like my answer, guys. It's going to probably rouse some of y'all up. But just remember, there's good and bad. Like, sometimes you never hear the good and we focus a lot on the bad. Alec Calabi role basically is to evaluate players, evaluate contracts, and then kind of evaluate the roster, and then help with strategic decisions in terms of what you do there. You can put two and two together and see that it's a little difficult. But that's what Alec Calabi's role is, to be quite honest. And then he leads a team of basically number crunchers, statisticians who work inside the front office that report to Alec Calabi, that study things like game trends across the league, all that kind of thing from his operations and strategy standpoint of things. Let's get to the scouting world. The scouting world and the scouting department's a little bit wider, and I think there's a far larger conversation about our NFL scouts and what they do exactly. So the big name you need to know here is Andy Weidel. Andy Weidel is like one of those other big names like Alec Calabi that plays a very important and vital role to this front office. He is the VP of player personnel, meaning I'm pretty sure that means that he directly reports back to Howie only. And then on top of that, he's probably got Ian Cunningham and Brandon Brown, the DOPPs, Director of Player Personnel, reporting to the VP of Player Personnel. So they probably work underneath Andy Weidel. The thing to remember about Andy Weidel, guys, is that he was one of those Joe Douglas guys. Andy Weidel gets a lot of he catches a lot of crap just because him and Howie are pretty tight. But to be honest with you, Andy Weidel has earned his stripes in the NFL as a scout. He was a long-term scout. When I say scout, I don't mean like only executive level, like the fancy title he has now. I mean, he was a regional scout for the Baltimore Ravens. So he came up underneath Joe Douglas that way. I mean, he spent a lot of time in the scouting world, guys. Like, he's not just like a suit and tie. Like, he's a legitimate scout. So Andy Weidel, one of those kind of holdovers from Joe Douglas that Howie loves so much. He's the VP of Player Personnel. I have not heard about him getting any kind of interviews yet. I'm a little shocked. I'm a little surprised he has not received interviews across the league yet. I mean, that kind of, that kind of makes me a little curious here of why that has or has not occurred, because he's definitely a well-known commodity. We'll see. I mean, he might end up getting one, right? The other person I'll paint a broad stroke over here is Tom. It's Tom Donahue. He's a senior advisor, I should say. Tom Donahue, the thing about Tom Donahue is like, he's an older guy. He came up really during the Cowher time. Him and Cowher got at each other's throats in Pittsburgh, and then he ended up moving on to Buffalo. Been around the league forever, guys. I mean, he's a different style of guy, man. He's a different dude. He's been around the league a long time. He's specifically brought in to help with the draft board. I'm going to get into a lot of the draft world, guys. So if you're really interested in how this draft stuff works, stay tuned for a few more minutes, guys, because I'm telling you, I'm going to go over some vital information about how draft boards are actually formed in the NFL. The next two guys are Ian Cunningham and Brandon Brown. We already talked about Brandon Brown. These are your DOPPs. Like I said, your DOPPs have like dual roles here. Like, in one hand, basically what your DOPPs do is they evaluate NFL rosters. On the other hand, they help with contracts. They do all the underlying work on contracts. So Ian Cunningham, who is the other DOPP with Brandon Brown, I don't know his education level, guys. I mean, he doesn't strike me as a lawyer, but I really don't know the guy. What I do know about Ian Cunningham is this. Ian Cunningham came up just like Andy Weidel through that Ravens organization as an actual scout, like spent time down in the trenches as a regional scout underneath Joe Douglas, and then came to Philadelphia via that circuit. So Ian, I would imagine, does a lot of the scouting stuff. I would imagine Brandon does a lot of the contract stuff. But what you can see here is that organizations, when they're doing these general manager interviews, these GM interviews, they're favoring the suit and ties, the guys who handle a lot of the paperwork stuff, more so than maybe the guys that are the, khaki pants and polo shirts that are out there on the football field scouting the guys, for a very oversimplification of what goes on there, guys. The next person I want to bring up, because this is an important title and this gets into how draft boards are set. Casey Weidel. So Casey obviously being related to Andy Weidel. Casey Weidel is our Director of Scouting Operations. Guys, I'm going to tell you what he does, and it's very important. I will tell you that he probably reports to Tom Donahue. I think Tom Donahue takes the lead in this role in terms of setting up the draft board. But Casey Weidell's title is, generally speaking, for organizations, that's the guy that normally sets your draft board. Now, it's more than one person that sets a draft board, guys. You got coaches involved in it. You got Casey Weidel would be involved in it. Ian and Brandon Brown would be involved. Tom would be involved. Andy would be involved. I'm pretty sure that Alec Calabi plays a role in analytics and his staff. So it's more than one person, but ultimately the person who's like the person that gets the credit or the blame here is Casey. It's Casey Weidel. So Casey Weidel's role, like what his role is, not role, but his role is, it really pertains to that draft board, guys. That's what Casey Weidel does for this front office. He oversees all of the scouting stuff. Stick with me, because there's another really important role in here that you may not know about scouting, and we're coming up on it. So if you lose a guy like Casey Weidel, if you lose a guy like Brandon Brown, Ian Cunningham, or Andy Weidel, like who might be the guys who might get promoted as other people get promoted? Well, you only really have two directors of scouting, right? You have Anthony Patch, who's your senior director of college scouting, and then you have Alan Wolking, who's your director of college scouting. Okay. Remember, Ian Cunningham used to be your director of college scouting. Brandon Brown used to be your director of pro scouting. There's no longer a director of pro scouting. You have a senior pro scout in Jeff Scott, but you don't no longer have that role anymore. Okay. So I would take a wild guess that probably the highest ranking guy on this list beyond them is going to be probably Casey Weidel. And after Casey Weidel, it's probably Anthony Patch and then Jeff Scott. That's how I perceive it. Doesn't mean I'm correct, guys. It's just the way I perceive these titles and just their experience and roles in the league and what they've done prior to their spots right now that they hold. In terms of pro scouts, so I told you about Jeff Scott. The other pro scout you need to know is Amina Solomon. Amina Solomon is one of the pro scouts on this football team. So I told you there was one more really, really important area we got to discuss when it comes to the front office, in particular draft. You need to know what type of service the Philadelphia Eagles use for things like the NFL Combine and things like Pro Days. There's two large scouting services. Let me move this closer, guys. There's two really, really important scouting services that are used by organizations throughout the league. The first one is called Blesto, B-L-E-S-T-O. The golden team, I can tell you, golden ticket, if you will, of teams that use Blesto would be the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers use Blesto services, okay? The Philadelphia Eagles use something called the NFS scouting service, so National Football Scouting Service, all right? Basically, this is just a Rolodex, if you will. If you guys are older and you remember the Rolodexes, right? This is your database of information when it comes to these players, and it has a lot to do with the advanced scouting, the stuff that's going to take place in the future, the next year's draft stuff, all that kind of stuff. That's the service the Eagles use. The person who heads the Eagles organization in terms of the NFS Scout is a gentleman by the name of Lee DiValerio. I don't know how you say his name, guys. His last name is D-I-V-A-L-E-R-I-O. That's what that NFS designation means, guys. He's handling the Rolodex of these future draft classes, basically. So that's a very, very important title. But that's the Eagles front office for the most part, guys. I mean, there's a ton of other roles here, but we'd be here all day if I'm sitting here trying to explain every single role inside this front office, guys. But what I will say, the big players, Alec Calabi, Andy Weidel, Ian Cunningham, and Brandon Brown, and Casey Weidel, Catherine Reich and Brandon Brown were the two people who so far have gotten the interviews. If you're asking me, Gabe, what name should we listen for? What name should we, kind of maybe predict? It'll either have a bigger role for the Eagles or will end up getting interviewed that haven't been listed as being interviewed yet. Ian Cunningham, you have to watch out for. It's a long-term scout, guy. He's a long-time scout in this league. This is a guy that has a name out there that people know. I will look for Ian Cunningham. Andy Weidel, of course, same thing. Guy's been in the league for a long time. People know who he is. He's got connections to Joe Douglas. He's a guy that I could see getting an interview. And then the surprising one, just because he's never left the Eagles organization. He's come up completely through this Philadelphia Eagles organization. He is one of these, he's a Harvard graduate. This is one of those Howie type people, right? Alec Calabi and I would say Brandon Brown in particular are very much Howie types, right? George doctorate, very well educated guys that, they do more of the contractual and more of the, the pen and paper stuff, if you will. Alec Calabi, VP of Operations and Strategy. If you get an organization that is really, really into analytics, and analytics is going to be a major approach to their organization, I can see a guy like Alec Calabi maybe being tapped as a potential general manager for an organization, to be quite honest. So, I mean, those are some names I would definitely look into to kind of see things that might come downhill. Let's say hello to everybody that's in the chat for a second. What's up, 2020 Vision? How you doing, buddy? Is Calabi the analytic guy? Halliday went to college with Lori's son. He is. So Alec Calabi, and that's 2020. That's a really good catch. I didn't know that. I didn't know that he went to he went to school with Jeff, Lori's son. He is. He's very much the analytical guy on the Philadelphia Eagles staff. He's a former Harvard graduate. He's a numbers. He's a pen and paper numbers cruncher. Which look, I hold dear to my heart. I'm kind of that guy too. Even though I got a little bit of playing experience, I got a lot of coaching experience, a little bit of scouting experience. So I mean, I hold that dear to my heart too. But he's very much probably a guy that I'm not too sure of his football background. I don't know what he did in terms of has he ever coached, has he ever played. I really don't know that about Calabi, but I do know that he was a Harvard graduate. So. Yeah, I mean, you're definitely onto something, man. Prime time, Stephen Joyce. What's up, Stephen? How you doing, buddy? Stephen's going to be writing for the channel. Stephen, I got to do your login information for the website, buddy. So get back with me. I'm going to I'll get with you today, and I'll send you all your information to get logged in so that way you can get started. Sam, the artist formerly known as S4L. Do you think the limited upward mobility of scouts pushes more football guys to coaching? That's a great question, Sam. That's a heck of a question. I'm not going to lie to you, Sam. That's a really good question. I'm not too sure I got the answer for it, to be quite honest with you. I will say that scouting in particular is a difficult grind to get involved into. It's not easy. And a lot of times, if you're going to get involved in college scouting and then potentially into the NFL, you kind of do need an in. You need an in. You need someone to know who you are and tap you from a high school or wherever you're coaching at and bring you in. That's definitely a side to scouting that a lot of people don't know, Sam. I did it for a couple of years, and I got pegged because I happened to know somebody who basically was on the scouting team at one of these small schools out by me. I got a ton of schools out here by me, Elon, NCA&T. There's a ton of these little small schools, Lenore, Rhine, all those are right out by where I live at, guys. So I got tapped that way when I did it for a couple of years. And to be honest with you, the other thing about scouting is that no one wants to talk about is it's a grind. My wife was not having that. I mean, I was on the road a lot, guys, because the thing about scouting is you don't know what they're going to do. I mean, maybe they'll be nice to you and say, like, they understand that you're not really looking to get in and become like a regional scout, like the head of a region or anything like that. I mean, everyone's a region, but you won't be the head of a region, so they're not going to just send you to some crazy faraway area. But you don't know that, man. Some places will put you on a plane and say, hey, you're going to be the West Coast scout, even though you live on the East Coast. You're going to be scouting California, Washington State, Oregon, Vegas. They'll put you on a plane and you don't know where you're going. I mean, it's a grind, man. You really don't know what's going to happen to you one day to the next. Eagles Uncensored. What's up, buddy? He said, what's good, Steve? Hope all is well. God bless, man. Everything's doing well, man. Everything's going well, Josh. Hanging in there. I hope everything's going well with you, buddy. I really appreciate everything you've been doing for Philly Foothills, man. You're a really good friend for him, man. Yeah, he's lucky to have you as a friend because you definitely had his back in the time of need, man. And it's I appreciate you doing that, man. That's a good look. Makes you have faith in humanity. What's up, Drew Johnson? How you doing, buddy? Good morning, Cody. How you doing, sir? Creed Godbolt coming in said, good morning, Coach. Do you know of any scouts or other personnel people outside of the Eagles organization that you would like to see them recruit? Excellent question, Creed. I do. I want to save that, though, Creed. I got a video coming up where I do want to tap that. I want to see if anyone gets moved. If anyone gets moved, Creed, I'm probably going to make a video kind of tapping who I think might be really good fits for this organization and what it believes in and what it does. I definitely have guys that I'm more favorable to, guys that I like more as scouts, but it's tough to say who Howie has connections to. So I gotta kind of like weigh both sides of this, guys. I have to weigh who who Howie has connections to, and I have to weigh who I think are really good scouts in the scouting world. So I'll definitely put a video out, Cree, that goes over that. Sam said, great answer. Thank you. Hope you're keeping me in mind for that next writer's gig. All right, Sam, I'll tell you what, man. Hit me up on Twitter. It's down out here. I'll move it down for you for a second, Sam. At Hider Steve. Hit me up on Twitter. Send me your information. If you want to write, I'll put you to work, sir. I have no problem putting you to work. If you really and honestly want to come on and contribute, we have the podcast that it will be launching. I mean, I do think that Allie's going to play a role in the podcast. And I think that, we're going to have Stephen Truancy. He's going to, he's got a background working within the music industry. So he understands audio a lot more than I do. So I'm going to be there to help with content, and I'll be there to pitch in if you guys need me on a podcast show. I'm there for it. But, we will have some stuff coming up, Sam. If you really want to work, I will absolutely put you to work, my guy. Like I got more than enough opportunities between this channel, the website, and the podcast. There's more than enough to go around, guys, to put everybody to work. What's up, Vincent? How you doing, buddy? Cree said, yeah, they would also have to be a good fit with the organization as well. Yeah, and that's the tough part is like we only really know Howie and we know Jeffrey, but to be truth be told, there's more players than just Howie and Jeffrey in the upper level of the Philadelphia Eagles organization. It's not just those two guys. Those are just the two guys that we're more familiar with. But there are guys who have very important roles in the organization that we don't really talk about very often. And that's true. You got to figure out who their connections might be inside the league as well. What's up, Vincent? He said, I just want Eagles to sign Mike Williams and draft a stud defensive end and defensive back for the perfect offseason. Those are three pretty big areas of need, getting a wide receiver, that can win and can make catches and play, Robin to your Batman in terms of, being there to complement and help get coverage off of guys like, Devontae Smith and guys like Dallas Goedert. Yeah, I mean, definitely, I think that's a huge one. Defensive end. We definitely could use a young pass rusher. I would probably also add an interior defensive lineman. I do think that getting a young interior defensive lineman that can actually play in the league is going to be very important because we got guys that are getting up there in age, and we need young, cheap kind of, guys that we can plug in and play here. And yeah, you're right. We definitely need corner help. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Like the news coming down about Steven Nelson is that I'm hearing rumors he's going to get paid. There's rumors saying Steven Nelson is going to get paid this offseason. I mean, look, I don't think that I think there's a limitation to how much I'd pay a guy like Steven Nelson, but the league gets desperate, man. And sometimes people will get paid, man. They'll definitely get paid. What's up, Vester Lettuce Choke? Morning, fellas. Morning, sir. How you doing today? Sam said, oh, I'm definitely serious. I will definitely hit you up on Twitter. Yeah, hit me up on Twitter, man. I'll get you started, man. I'll definitely get you started. Vincent said, I think safety is a bigger need than linebacker. What do you say, sir? I think they're both pretty big needs. I think you need both. I think you can make the argument that at least you have youth at linebacker. TJ Edwards is pretty young. You could definitely make the argument that outside of TJ Edwards, you also have a very, very young football player. And, Davion Taylor, Alex Singleton is still under 30. I guess you can make the argument that at least there's youth there. Although I do think you still need an upgrade in talent at that position group, to be quite honest. But I get what you're saying in terms of safety because you got an unknown in Kayvon Wallace. We don't know what Kayvon Wallace is going to be. Marcus Epps looks like he could be a player in the league. At worst, at least a third safety. At one point I thought that guy was a fourth safety, and to be real with you, he might be the second safety at this point. And then you got two veteran guys. Anthony Harris I think is respectable, but he is older. You get outside of Anthony Harris, and then you got Rodney McLeod, Rodney McLeod's one of my favorite Eagles, especially of recent. Maybe not of all time, but of recent, he's one of my favorite Eagles. But, he's 31 coming off of 2 ACLs. I mean, not too sure. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, I can definitely get your point, Vincent, that safety might be a bigger need than people are realizing. What's up, Messiah? How you doing? He said, I think the offseason Mike Williams should be our primary target. We need a big boundary X receiver, and we should sign Nelson and draft a young prospect to develop under Slay in Nelson. And Nelson, I don't hate re-signing Steven Nelson. I think Steven Nelson, at the very minimum, Messiah, has at least been serviceable, right? I think it depends on the cost, right? It's kind of like the Miles Sanders, conundrum, right? Where it's like, Gate, would you re-sign Miles Sanders? And it's like, that's kind of a tough question. Like, what's the contract we're talking about? Like, are we talking top 10 money, or are we talking like 12 to like 18 money? Because 12 to 18 money, I'm a little bit more interested. If we're talking top 10 money, I got to really think about that. Like, Miles is a very good football player, but he still struggles with vision at times. He still struggles putting the ball on the turf. He still has these little nagging injuries that seem to get him every year, and he misses a handful of games. Like, it's kind of that same question with Steven Nelson. When I look at it, Messiah, it's kind of like, I don't really know what to make of Steven Nelson, so I don't know. Like, it depends on the value. I think he's adequate. I think he's okay. I think you can make the argument that Steven Nelson and Darius Slay and Avonte Maddox have been a really good trio of corners. It's probably the best trio of corners we've had in Philly in a while. But I definitely think you can upgrade over him too. You get what I mean, Messiah? Like I definitely think there's an upgrade to be made over Steven Nelson. 2020 says Steven Nelson has done a good job. I can't remember him giving up a 100-yard game or killing the team. Yeah, I don't, 2020 vision, that's a great question. I really need to look into it before I say he has or has not given up a 100-yard game. But I will say he has been beat early in the season in particular. He was getting beat a lot in the red zone. He was definitely getting taken in the red zone. I think some of that had to do with communication errors to where he didn't really understand his leverage and his responsibility early in the season within the scheme. And I think it did lead to him getting beat a few times inside the red zone because of that. We all remember the Avonte Maddox and Steven Nelson kind of like back and forth jostling that happened on the red zone early in the season to where, Avonte was trying to tell him, like, hey, man, you need to be outside. Your responsibility's outside. Like, what were you doing? So, I mean, like, it is kind of tough, man. Like, it's a tough assessment to make 2020. And I like the fact that you're kind of pumping your brakes saying, like, hey, maybe we should kind of look deeper and just see, like, has he been getting beat by receivers like that? My guess is in Gannon's system, it's a complex read because even if you're giving up a ton of yardage to receivers, you're also playing with a ton of space and you're allowing a lot of yardage before you can ever get up and make a tackle. So I do think there's some, complexity to it. The Bull Philly said, just imagine how electric this team might have been if Deuce was the coach and he would be coming from an Andy Reid tree, just saying. Yeah, I think the issue with Deuce is the Bull. And, I made a video saying that I really wanted Deuce to be the coach. And I like Nick Sirianni. After I kind of reviewed all the coaches, I said Nick Sirianni would be my hire. What I would say about Deuce is that he didn't have a ton of experience playing calls. Same kind of concern with Nick, where you just don't know his experience in terms of like play calling. But yeah, I mean, I thought Deuce could rally the troops. I thought Deuce could hold the troops together. I thought Deuce could get guys to play for him. Kind of the same thing we've watched Nick Sirianni be able to do, right? Rally guys, get everybody together and get them playing. Say, Sam, what's good, man? He say, hey, Gates, seen a few mocks that has us getting Williams wide receiver, Leo defensive lineman, and Dean at linebacker. It would be a blessing if that came to fruition, laugh out loud. Yeah, like if that were to happen, Leo's a good defense. He's a good D tackle. I like Leo a lot. Dean, the Kobe Dean's a very athletic linebacker. And I mean, Williams is a decent wide receiver. I don't hate those picks at all. What's up, Vincent? He said, Kevon Wiles has looked like utter trash. This draft has been 10 cornerbacks in the first 2 rounds, better than Nelson. Sorry, guys. Miles Sanders has to show out in the playoffs if he wants to get paid top 10. Yeah, it's kind of tough too, man, with that whole situation with his hand. I just don't know that. I don't want to count the young man out. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to count him out 2020, but they're going to swipe at that hand. you know how football is 2020. They're going to go for that hand. They're going to test the hand to see if it's right. You know exactly how it is. They're going for that hand. Is Miles playing this game? What's up, Chaos? How you doing, buddy? From what I understand, he's definitely playing, man. From what I understand, he's definitely going to play. Well, you know what, Chaos? Let me pump the brakes. He's expected to play. I shouldn't say he's definitely anything. He's expected to play. He's definitely expected to play. Not that he's necessarily 100% going to. I should definitely rephrase that a little bit. Messiah said, I think resigning Miles Sanders is definitely worth it. I don't think he's going to ask for a big contract just because he knows his injury status, and I think it's worth it for him to miss 2 to 3 games. Well, we at least have the duration of next season to try to figure it out and try to figure out where he wants to be paid at. I definitely think if the Eagles could get him on a discount deal, now's the time to do it because his value is probably only going to you could go down. His value could go down in theory, but it's far more likely to go up with a healthy season in this system than it is to go down. So this is probably the more opportune time if you're the Eagles to get him. But he still is technically under contract for next year. Messiah says, also, it's not like he's a CMC where he's out all year when he gets hurt. Yeah, that's true. And CMC is a good player. To be honest with you, CMC is worth taking a chance on because of how talented he is. But yeah, it's just been nagging. It's been nagging little small injuries that keeps him out. Before it was a lot of soft tissue stuff, right? Where it was like hamstrings and like ankles. It was soft tissue crap that kept happening. What's up, Allie? How you doing? Allie said, Steven Nelson's numbers are good. Number 11 ranked back. 7 player by PFF, but the film is sketchy. Yeah, the last time I saw him, it depends on how you're filtering it, Allie. it depends on how you're filtering between man and zone coverage and stuff like that. But I definitely think that he's been better down the stretches. They've played man. They've kept safety over top to help him. I think he's a guy that he'll fight. He'll fight back to the football. I think he gives you full effort. He's not a distraction guy. He doesn't strike me as a me guy. You know, that was kind of the rep in the offseason. It seemed like he was a bit of a me guy coming out of Pittsburgh. But, you know, my issues were never with him personally, because every time I watched him do an interview, he always seemed like a very intelligent young man that was very well-spoken, very thoughtful in what he said, but definitely kind of came out the rap of seeming like I want to get paid, and he didn't seem to have the production to back it up. And that's really where I was more skeptical, is when I dove into his film and I looked at the games like he had last year against Buffalo, and the way Gabriel Davis kind of torched him a little bit, I was like, you know, I don't know if I'd be paying this guy around that $8 million mark or more. I think this is a guy you want to get in. I think I said 6 or under, and we got him really, really cheap. And, you know, if you get him at around the same contract you just got him, Ali, I think I'd keep him too. I think I'd definitely keep him too. What's up, the Bull? 2020 said, I like Nelson. Maybe after how bad Darby was, Nelson is a stud. That's funny, man. I will caution, though, you know, Darby was really good in 2017, right? I mean, he definitely played the role, although I think he got injured for a duration of time in 17, so maybe that's why. Maybe because of the injury, we didn't get to truly see what he was. I don't know, man. But I think I remember him being injured in 17 for a little while, but he played pretty well in 17. He did his job for what we went out there and traded for. But, yeah, you're right. I think old double move Darby, as what Raiche used to call him 2020. I think Philly Fresh used to call him, was it Burnt Toast Darby or something like that? Sam, the artist formerly known as S4L, said Sirianni has been a pleasant surprise, but Deuce would have been so cool to see. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was just rooting for Deuce because I'm just a Deuce guy. I mean, I think Sirianni's a great hire. And like I said, once I went and really looked and put time into Sirianni and dug through his interviews and watched him break down football, like that dude came up to the top of my list. And that's, everyone thinks like, man, Gate, how did you predict it? I didn't predict it. I just took a wild guess and said that my preference would be towards Sirianni. Just watching the film, I knew the guy knew a lot about football. I could tell that like he was passionate about it. It was, you know, it's in his system. It's what he is as a person. You know, you can't, like, his identity is tied up into football. I could tell that. You know, anytime you got a guy whose identity is like so closely tied to a game like that, like football, like, you know, if you're trying to bet on a long shot, I think it's a long shot you bet on. You know what I mean? But yeah, I was definitely a Deuce guy. Vincent said Miles is always hurt. He's got the lingering stuff, the lingering injury stuff. Vincent said Eagles could draft a running back too. That guy from UCLA would be perfect. We'll have to see. You know, it's really a matter of what they see in terms of the need, Vincent, in terms of what type of back do they want. Because if you're going to draft a guy, do they want a Jonathan Taylor type, right? And that's a hard guy to find. And, you know, Jonathan Taylor's size profile compared to that, you guys were telling me, was it like a 4.38 40 he ran at the combine? Like, you don't find dudes that are built like him that run that kind of speed. You know, that's a really difficult, you know, find. I mean, if you got scouts that are pulling that out every draft, like, hire them. That's really difficult to find. That's like trying to find Mulata in every draft. You know what I mean? Marky Mack said, I thought this was Miles' last year under contract. Do you know how much he's been making on his last year? No. So you got to remember, Miles and JJ are from the same exact draft. So Miles and JJ's contracts expire after next year. But traditionally speaking, Marky, this is the year you would negotiate. You always negotiate a year ahead. And if you're the Eagles and you really do want to keep Miles Sanders, I think his value probably only stands to get higher, not lower, by staying healthy in season. Now, I'm not saying it can't get lower, but if he has a completely healthy season with this offensive line he's got in front of him, he's going to produce next year. You know what I mean? Like, so I think right now, if you're truly going to do it, this is probably the better value you're going to get for him. Or you do what a lot of people are suggesting, which is you use him for the duration of his rookie contract. And because he's a running back, it's nothing personal. He's a good football player. Most people like him. But, you know, you either go get you a cost-effective veteran and you go into the draft and you keep trying to hit on guys to get them for those, you know, those 4 or 5 years. Vincent said, just saw Slay is recruiting Mike Williams online to come to Philly. I wonder how Shane Steichen relationship is with Williams. He is the perfect fit. I think Mike Williams even played underneath Sirianni for a year, I thought. So, I mean, like, there's definitely a connection back to Mike Williams. I think that's why a lot of us are kind of, you know, pulling Mike Williams. But me, it's more than just the Steichen Sirianni stuff with Mike Williams. I also like Mike Williams just from the fact of just he's a big, strong hands guy. Like, he drops balls. I mean, every good receiver is going to drop a few. Be straight up with you. Everybody drops a few. It happens. But he's a very good contested catch guy. And I don't think we got a guy like that on the roster, even though we're supposed to. I mean, Deion Kane is kind of that body style, just probably not. He's just not that level of player. I don't think he's as good as Mike Williams. And, JJ just never panned out, although he's supposed to be that too. Red Eagle said, do you think Nakobe Dean is much better than what we already have in Jannard Avery? Yeah, I think he's an upgrade over Jannard Avery, Red Eagle. And that's not taking a shot at Jannard Avery. I think they're a little different physically. Jannard Avery's a little different of a player. Jannard Avery's kind of he's a bit of a mismatch, man, just because like he does seem to have the body type of a 34 outside rush edge linebacker, but honestly, his most productive season came from a 3-point stance, hands in the dirt, 5-tech defensive end. So I mean, it's hard to say with Jannard Avery, but I like Avery. Like, I don't think I think Avery's the kind of guy that he allows you to wait until Nakobe Dean is the right pick at the right value at the right spot. You get what I mean? Like, having a guy like Jannard Avery makes it to where you don't have to reach. But got to remember, Jannard Avery is a free agent. Chaos the Filthy said, do you bring Nelson back, or is it time to develop Maddox outside game? No, I wouldn't move Maddox outside. It's not that Maddox can't play. Maddox is a good football player, and I think if you had him out there for a couple of years, fully developing, but there's physical limitations to his height and size. Although he's very gifted in terms of the movement and the speed. I do think that Maddox is quite good at shadowing guys and staying in their hip pocket, staying in phase with receivers. But there are limitations. There are limitations because of his profile. What I will say is that Maddox has a bad tendency when he plays outside. His eyes start to travel, and he gets caught with head fakes and stuff because he's not playing the hips. He's not watching the hips. He's not watching, he's watching shoulders too much, and he gets caught. Vincent said Nakobe Dean is a worlds better than any linebacker on our roster. I don't know if he's worlds better. It's hard to project a rookie to be worlds better, but I think the ceiling is a lot higher, Vincent. I agree with that. The ceiling's higher, a lot higher. Messiah said, honestly, I could never figure out what was the problem with Darby. He had the speed and the hip movement. Just don't know why he was so bad. A lot of these guys, I would make the same argument with Darby. What got Darby beat was his bad technique at times. I mean, he had all the speed, all the quickness, all those things, all those things were there. There's a reason why the Eagles took a flyer on him and went out there and drafted him. I mean, there's a reason why he was once the defensive rookie of the year. You know what I mean? I believe he had the DROY at one point in Buffalo. But what I'll say about Darby is like, just like I just said about Maddox, he gets caught. He gets caught to where he's playing shoulders. He's playing the head. He's not playing the hips. And if you do that, you're going to get beat. Guys are going to get you. And I think he got caught a few times. Vincent said Maddox can't play outside. He's too small. He's perfect in the slot. Burnt toast Darby. He was killing this team besides 2017. Yeah, I think that was Philly Fresh's nickname for him. I always thought that was funny as heck. Would you take Calvin Ridley over Mike Williams? What's up, Chemical 215? How you doing, sir? Yes and no. So I think it's a complex question, Chemical 215. In terms of if I'm just judging the player, who's the better player, Calvin Ridley or Mike Williams? Calvin Ridley's the better player. There's no doubt about it, Chemical 215. But everything's kind of on. You got to put everything into the context in which it occurs, which is contracts and age, things like that. Now, I don't think from an age standpoint, obviously Calvin Ridley is still young. He's got years left in the league. But you're talking $11 million 5th-year option for Calvin Ridley. Now, I will say that the positive side to Calvin Ridley is he's still under contract with Atlanta. So potentially you stand a better chance at maybe trading assets to get him, bring him into Philadelphia, and then possibly having that young man endear himself to the city, and want to play here longer. So maybe he's not going to give you like a team-friendly deal, but maybe, he plays for $14 or $15 million a year on an average salary, as opposed to being able to get that $17, $18 million mark in the open, in the open market. You know what I mean? So, I mean, you could look at it from that perspective and say, like, maybe Calvin Ridley gives you that way where Mike Williams, we're really relying on the fact that he has connections with Nick Sirianni and connections back to Shane Steichen on the coaching staff, and what if there's a better offer out there for him? What if, even though he has those connections, he's like, look, this team's willing to pay me a lot more. And like, you only got so many amount of years to make money in the NFL, so you don't have that chance to endear him to the city first. So I can see that perspective of things, but Mike Williams is, at least we know, 100% available. We're speculating if Calvin is, you know what I mean? So it's kind of a number one. The first step is to really find out, is Calvin really, really available? 2020 said Sanders has more juice than all the other running backs. I agree with that point, 2020. That's true. He's more durable than Howard, it seems. Sanders and Hurts are my key players on offense against Tampa. But here's the thing, though, 2020. The one thing I can say about Jordan Howard is when Jordan Howard gets hurt, it's always just day to day, brother. Always just day to day. Even if it's 18 months, man, it's day to day. Now, look, I think they both have been beat up, to be fair. I think you're making a valid point, 2020, which is we all love Jordan Howard, but I also think it's the fact that Jordan Howard's an inexpensive veteran. You know what I mean? But you're right. Jordan Howard had that stinger back in 2019 that was supposed to be day to day. Then it was week to week. And then it turned into, well, we'll get him back sometime after he gets released from Miami in the 2020 season. You know, it is what it is there in that particular circumstance, to be quite honest. But yeah, I mean, look, they both get beat up. That is true. You're right, 2020. They both have suffered injuries. What's up, Cole? How you doing, buddy? He said, I personally want us to use our first 5 picks on all defense. We can get the wide receiver in free agency. If we really want O-line, we can get it in the later rounds. Our O-line coach is one of the best. See, Cole, I understand what you're saying, but I kind of disagree on the principle of it. And what I mean by that is I think you're right. If all circumstances are there, you know, the defense needs more attention than the offense right now. But I will say you still could use a receiver even if you sign one in free agency. And you certainly can still use linemen because you got a center that's about to retire. You got a backup swing tackle who's not a swing tackle in Andre Dillard. And then you got a guy in Isaac Seumalo that you don't know what you're going to do with. Maybe he's your future at center, but he's kind of in a weird spot where he's not going to be your left guard because that's clearly going to be Dickerson. He can compete with right guard with you know, the situation you got going there between Driscoll and him, but Driscoll's on a rookie contract and Seumalo is not. So, you know what I'm saying? You kind of have these issues to where when you look at that, you still do need more than what you got at receiver. I don't think you stop plugging away if you get the right valuation. You know, it's all about where you're picking and who's available, who's the best player. I think you do things in free agency to ensure that when you're in the draft, you're truly taking the best player available and you're not reaching for a position of need. Like, well, this is the best guy we got on our board at this position. I think that's the key. What's up, Andrew? He said, I love Miles Sanders, but he cannot catch and hold on to the ball with 2 good hands, and he's supposed to ball out with just one. He needs to sit this one out. If he's a go, man, he's a go. You still play him. And I would counter back, Andrew. I get what you're saying that when you consider it in the totality of what he did in terms of practices, he had trouble early in the season in practices securing the football as a receiver, catching the ball. But in season, he's been pretty dependable, Andrew, to be quite honest. He's got one of the lowest drop rates out of all the guys. Although you're right. In the last game he played in, he had an ugly drop, to be honest. Although, he like I said, he's been a little bit more shorthanded than some of our other receiving options. As much as I like the long-term future in the ceiling, you know, of a guy like Kenneth Gainwell. Kenneth Gainwell has dropped far more passes this season than Miles Sanders has. He's got a higher drop rate the whole 9 yards. It's not just the total number. It's the rate at which he's dropping them. Philip Preston, what's good, man? He said Hargrave, Cox, and Sweat is going to have a big game Sunday. Take out Jensen to get to Brady. I hope you're right, man, and that's what I would try to do. I would try to attack the middle of that offense if I can, but I will tell you right now, the middle of their offense is good. It's going to be one heck of a battle, man. It's going to be one heck of a battle. I'm actually kind of excited to see this game because this is going to be a really good offensive line on defensive line matchup on both sides of the football. For both teams, I should say, on both sides of the football. Philip said, weather going to play a big part in this game. Florida, though, Philip. It's Florida, man. If you don't like the weather forecast, just wait an hour. That's what they say in Florida, right? You don't like what the weather forecast says, just wait an hour. It says it's going to be this right now. We don't know how it's going to ultimately turn out in Florida, man. It can change quickly. Jalen Mills was also shake and bake too. Laugh out loud. That's funny to Bull. Philip said, I hope Sanders' hand is completely healed. I don't need him damaging it more or fumbling, you know. Gainwell, Huntley, put them in. Well, I think it's a matter of who do you have healthy. You know what I'm saying? You gotta look over your roster and see who is healthy, who's healthy on your football team. And if you got Jordan Howard is good on that stinger, if it's all full go, then I think the majority of your handoff should be with Jordan Howard and it should be with Boston Scott. Then you can mix in Gainwell maybe in the passing game, maybe as a 2-minute back. You got Huntley to handle kickoff returns. Maybe you can use him for a play here and there, but he's probably not going to crack your lineup too much, to be quite honest. Although I thought Huntley had a really good game with Dallas. I thought he showed why the team has kept him around. I thought he showed why he was, just like Gainwell, he was a 5th-round pick, but he was a 5th-round pick in 2020. Detroit took him. And that's, Philly was really interested in Gainwell in that draft. I'm sorry, not Gainwell. Obviously, they were interested in Gainwell. They drafted him. In Huntley in the 2020 draft. Philip said, what center can we get that will live up to Jason Kelce's legacy as the best center in football? I wouldn't say, look, I love Jason Kelce. He wasn't the best center even in his generation, to be honest. If I'm being honest about it, he wasn't. But he's one of the top 2 or 3 guys in the 10, 15 years time frame. I think your overall point is on, though, which is it's going to be really difficult to replace that guy. It is not just that it's not what he can do in terms of like moving. I think you can get a guy that's stronger at the point of attack, who's stronger in terms of holding up to a guy lined up right on the nose, right over top of him. But the way he gets to the perimeter, what he does downfield blocking, what he does from a blitz pickup standpoint, sliding the protection for your quarterback, identifying where blitzes and pressure is coming from, that aspect of the game, I think you're right about, Preston. I think that's really, really difficult to make up for. And it's a lot to put on a rookie to do. And I think that's why they really wanted Isaac Seumalo, because Isaac Seumalo was a natural center coming out of college, to be quite honest. And, Isaac Seumalo was Carson Wentz. They were in some kind of camp together. I'm sorry, guys. I'm not bringing up Carson Wentz other than just to talk about Seumalo in this situation. But Carson Wentz was in a camp with Seumalo during the draft period. And Seumalo was his roommate, and he was the center in that, for that duration. That's why they drafted them 2 together. And they always plan on using Seumalo as a center. So I don't know if that's still a plan or not. You know what I mean? I don't know if it's post Kelce Seumalo is who they're going to put there. Are they going to draft a guy? Might they move Dickerson still? Dickerson's got experience playing center. And then you also got Driscoll. Driscoll's played center before. So, I mean, we got a ton of dudes that had the potential to do it. It's just a matter of, like, what they want to do. Or you can draft a guy. It's hard to say what they're going to do as an organization at that spot. I am Jim Ruiz. What's up, buddy? He said, Miles has dropped the ball too many times. I've never seen that from Westbrook. Not this season, he hasn't, guys. That's kind of a false narrative this season, guys. I'm going to be honest with you. He dropped it in the last time he was in a game, and it was an ugly drop. But he also had the hand thing going on. To be quite honest with you guys, he's got one of the lowest drop rates on the team right now. During the offseason, he was struggling. He was definitely struggling during training camp and stuff to catch the football. But once the lights went on and the game started, guys, he's been one of the more dependable guys we've had on the team, to be quite honest. That's a little bit of a bad narrative that's kind of being spread around. And I think it's because of how much he struggled in training camp. But people don't realize once the game started, he's been pretty dependable, to be quite honest. I would sit Rager and Whiteside. I'd rather have Ward. You can't sit him, man. We're not deep enough to be sitting, guys, to be quite honest. JJ's not going to have to be. You won't need to sit JJ. He's on injured reserve. But you can't. You need guys out there, unfortunately. I still think you should play Greg Ward. I think Greg Ward should be getting more snaps than he's been getting. I think Greg Ward, although he's not explosive, what you can get from Greg Ward is dependability that he's going to be where he's supposed to be. And you know that because he's playing the slot, he's not going to face a ton of man press coverage. So you don't have to really worry about him getting removed like that. While when you deal with guys like, Rager and stuff like that, because they do play on the outside, you have to do more to create free releases. But some of this is on the coaching staff, which is, you look at Bruce Arians' system. And one thing I'll say about Bruce Arians, and everybody keeps saying that we need to man up on them. Bruce Arians' system is completely built around the concept of beating man coverage. They do a lot of 2 and 3 receiver releases. You're not going to be able to man up on them like that. You're going to have to play some zone on them. There's just no doubt about it. It's what Bruce Arians does from an X's and O's standpoint. Ali said Linderbaum's pro comp is Kelce. I agree. I don't know that he's going to be that, but yeah. Vincent said Preston draft Tyler Linderbaum first round from Iowa. I have no clue how to say that, other than I'll just say the last one is I ate chicken. What's good, my guy? Good morning. What do you think of Mulata's development and his impact in this playoff game? His development is extraordinary. I mean, a guy that's never really played football before, was a rugby player down in, Australia, to be, the exact guy you take in the 7th round. You take a flyer you take a flyer on a dude. You know, you just take a flyer and you hope for the best, right? You do whatever you can do and hope that guy works out. And it just speaks to what kind of coach Jeff Stoutland is. That Jeff Stoutland took a guy that was purely athletic profile and turned him into probably one of the better left tackles in the league. I'm not going to say he's the best. I think that's a little too much. You know, that's a little bit too much of a homerism. If I did that, I'd be a little bit of a homer. But I will say that outside of Mekhi Becton, him and Mekhi Becton are like different from everybody else in the league. They're built differently. They're more physically intimidating than other dudes. And those dudes are big guys that are like dancing teddy bears, man. They got good movement, and you got to give Stoutland a ton of credit, man. Oof. 2020 said, my ideal wide receiver trio next season, which is doable, is Smith, Mike Williams, and George Pickens. I don't hate that, man. If he's healthy. I'm done with speed guys and contested catch guys. I want players with ball skills who catch. You don't like the way that JJ gets out there and blocks up. Listen, 2020, the one thing I can say about JJ is he's always lined up correctly. Does anyone remember that speech? Wasn't that Carson Walk's 2020? No. It was Grow. He always lines up in the right spot. Man, what an adventure with JJ, man. We've had quite the adventure at wide receiver. Delco Green. Eagles are sitting in prime draft position with the 15th and 16th picks. Both have resulted in good returns. Looking at the last 20 drafts, pick 15 has produced 8 Pro Bowlers, 1 Hall of Fame. Pick produced 9 Pro Bowlers. I think you were trying to get to pick 16, maybe 9 Pro Bowlers. True, but we have to make that list too, Delco. You know what I mean? We got to make that list. But yeah, I mean, you're still dealing with the top half of the draft, right? From 16 forward is the top half of the draft. It's a matter of, you know how it works, Delco. It's a matter of how deep the draft is. Not every draft is as deep. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you don't have 16 dudes that are that good. Sometimes you only got 8 or 10 of those guys. Sometimes you got 12 of those guys. Sometimes you got 23, 24 of those dudes. You know, it's just it depends on how deep the draft is, to be honest. Saison said, folks need to understand that the only reason Miles had the dropsies was because of Carson's nose diving. His passes laugh out loud. Saison, I will push back a little bit there. And this is not to protect Carson, but early in Miles Sanders' career, because I looked into it because I couldn't understand why we couldn't hit a screen pass. And it was frustrating the crap out of me that we weren't hitting screen passes. Like, this is ridiculous. And I looked into it, and what I ended up finding out is that Miles Sanders actually was not aligning correctly. He was not getting to the right depth on the screens, which was causing a lot of the miscommunication in the passes. So it's complex, but he's been a lot better, to be honest, Saison. Since his rookie season, he got better in the screen game last year. And we saw, I mean, even when Hurts came in 2020, if you go back to the New Orleans game and think about those 2 or 3 passes early in the game where he threw out kind of that little flat route, you know, Miles did pretty well. I mean, Miles is not, I don't think you're going to ever get, I think we caught lightning in the bottle in 2019 with the downfield passing to Miles. I don't know that Miles is really that guy where he's going to beat you down the field 25 plus yards on a consistent basis. I think we just got really, really lucky. And I mean, I think he can do it here and there. If you just leave him by himself unattended down the field, he can make a catch on you and he can get you. But I don't think he's like that type of, you know, I think that's a bit much. I think Kenneth Gainwell is a much more nuanced route runner that can create that kind of separation, is that kind of like shiftiness, elusiveness to him. So, you know, I think that you probably have a better shot at doing that. But yeah, I do think Miles' hands are better than people think. I just think that for whatever reason, he's better when the lights come on than in practices because, you know, they were calling him out. They were calling him out in practice, and I'm not saying that they were wrong to call him out because he was putting the ball on the ground in practice. He was dropping a lot of passes. Well, when the lights came on, he fixed it up. What's up, Clippy Tunes? How you doing, buddy? What's good, Dante? How you doing, bud? Eric said, GM Gate City. You're rocking, Coach. Glad to have you finally catch you live. Hey, glad to have you here, Eric. Appreciate you, buddy. Philip said, I agree with everything you said. That's why I like coming here, getting my questions answered. Everybody hit that like button. Great show. Great guy. Thank you, Philip. Thank you, buddy. I appreciate that, man. Stoutland is the Jim Johnson of the O-line. That's a big praise, man. I like Jeff Stoutland, man. Jeff Stoutland is, you know, that's a guy that he's endured 3 coaches now. And to be honest with you, I mean, he's a guy I'd love to keep here for as long as he wants to coach. Dude's good, man. Saison said, speaking of Jordan Mailata, you should check out his short doc they dropped today on the NFL YouTube channel. Teared up a little bit. It's that good, huh? I don't know much about him personally. So I don't know much about him at all personally. I really don't. Other than he was a rugby player from Australia or New Zealand, somewhere in that area. I am Jimmy Reed said, do you know if Whiteside's mom is going to the game to make sure he don't get too wet? Oh my God, umbrella. I hope not, man. I hope not. But he's on IR, so at least we don't have to deal with that, man. It's just crazy that, you know what I mean? We've had to deal with this stuff. 2020 people, 2020 said 61 people in here and only 25 likes. Hit that like button and subscribe. Appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. Andrew said, I miss Corey Clement. Yeah, Corey took some injuries though, Andrew. I mean, he had, he dealt with the knee stuff. He was just never really the same physically. And it's kind of sad to see because, like, when you deal with these type of injuries like ACLs and stuff, Andrew, it's hard to predict when a guy's going to be right again, right? Sometimes they're back the next year and they, they're 85% of themselves. And by the following year, they're 100% of themselves. Some dudes, it takes them 3 years or so, 2-3 years. Corey Clement, he probably came back a little early, suffered more little nagging injuries on top of the ACL. I just think he had a bad, like, it just started a whirlwind with him. And I don't think he ever got right again in Philadelphia from a health standpoint. And now, you kind of see that he's getting a little bit more back to what he once was. He's not, I don't think he'll ever be what he was as a rookie, but, we see a little bit of it coming, man. Michael said, my stance on Ridley, Roll Tide. I think if we can put him with Smitty and somehow get Garrett Wilson or Mike Williams, we're set at wide receiver. Yeah, I mean, look, even if you don't get any of those guys, if you got Ridley, you got Goddard, and, and you got Devontae Smith, you got a really good receiving core. Quez Watkins can be a really good fourth option, man. You know what I mean? Like, I don't hate that receiving core at all. I think that would be a phenomenal receiving core. I would just hope in that situation, Michael, is that they find a way of keeping him here. You know what I'm saying? Like, I wouldn't want him just for the 1 year. I would want him to potentially get here, get him only $11 million, have the guy just love the city, and then want to sign, a long-term contract. Be in the city, good 4 to 6 years. What T.O. was supposed to be here for. You guys remember that? I mean, T.O. was really supposed to be here for like 3 to 5 years is what we were expecting. But yeah. What I miss? A lot, Dante. A lot, bro. There's a lot. G-Fam said, don't see many ways we can win this game. Sorry, man. It jumped on me right as I was reading. What has to happen for us to get the W? What's up, G-Fam? Look, it's not easy to beat Brady. I'm going to tell you right now, that's very true. But I will also say the Brady we're facing this year is not the same Brady as, 5-6 years ago, to be fair. He's not that same guy. And, like, Brady has led far less talented wide receivers to Super Bowl wins. He didn't have Mike Williams out there playing receiver in some of those early Super Bowls, right? I mean, some of those dudes, Deion Branch and those guys, I'm not saying they're horrible, but they're not Mike Williams. You know what I mean? Obviously, he had Moss for a little while. He's won with 2 tight end sets and Wes Welker and Ben Hogan, all those weird dudes. He's definitely won with far less talent. But I'll also say he lost with bad talent too, and he left New England because of that. So I can see kind of both sides of how this could limit him not having AB and have to rely on these other guys that just are not as talented. Tyler Johnson's probably better than what the average fan might realize. You know what I mean? I think that unless you were really deep into the 2020 draft, then you may not really know that he was a really good prospect coming out of Minnesota and that, he was just kind of buried behind really good receivers. I mean, you had, Chris Godwin and AB and Mike Williams. Like, it's hard to get reps with those dudes in front of you. You know what I mean? It's hard to get snaps like that. But, he's better than what most people think. Rashad Perriman had a really good year 1 year in Tampa Bay. And, now he's got Brady out there, which Brady can make, a lot of dudes look good. No doubt about it. I think that the key here is you have to know what they're going to try to do here. Because if we try to man up with Slay, Bruce Arians likes to run these 2 and 3 wide receiver sets. He's going to try to get Mike Williams free releases off of Slay. And he's going to challenge you. If you're playing man, you better communicate. You better communicate off of those free releases or else somebody's going to be wide open because there's going to be a breakdown. I think a lot of teams, normally when you start playing teams that are run 2 and 3 receiver stack sets like this, they will, generally speaking, fall into a zone where there's some kind of a match concept. Depending on where this guy goes, you're going to match into whatever your responsibility is. Quarters, whatever it is. Match quarters, whatever you come up with. There's different ways of doing it. Baylor ran a very interesting, like, kind of 3-3-5 match zone that they did at Baylor. It's very much in vogue in the college game right now. I haven't seen it too much in the NFL game, but, there's many ways of achieving the goals while I'm bringing that up, guys. I would not be shocked to see the Eagles man up in certain situations. You're not going to always play zone here. Man up in certain situations, but, they're going to they're going to do some things to get free releases, guys. I mean, they're Mike Williams is a guy that's just not an outside receiver. He does play in the slot. He's played over 200 snaps in the slot. Last time I looked, I want to say he played I want to say it was like 260 some snaps, guys, from the slot. So, I mean, he's a guy that moves all around the formation. We can't just think he's going to be exactly right here and just put Slay right there on him. He's going to move around. And they're going to do some things to try to get him freed up because, at the end of the day, the same way that, you hear suggestions that the Eagles should be taking, Devontae Smith and taking Dallas Goedert and putting them on the same side of the formation together and running free releases with those two. So that way you're giving them the best chances of getting a free release and getting open. Well, they can do the same thing with, guys like Gronkowski and guys like, doing basically doing the same exact thing, Mike Evans, and running that same exact concept, guys. Whiteside's mom, what I miss. They're talking about how it's supposed to rain in Tampa Bay, how she came to practice that time with the umbrella. Kivo said, imagine getting to a bowl and still chasing these picks. We have guys like Lane, Kelsey, Cox, McLeod they've done this before. They've been the underdogs and they've been on a team that went through the postseason. Yeah, I agree. We got guys that are not inexperienced, right? We got guys that have been in this current situation before where they've been the underdog and, they rose above the circumstance. I agree with you there. The Bull Philly said running backs never last too long in the NFL. Somewhat true. I agree with you. If you're looking on average, right? If you're looking on the average there, the Bull. The only difference being is that like Frank Gore played until he was like, I don't know, almost 50 something. I'm joking, but Frank Gore did play for a long time. Kiva said, along with Young at ease, Winters and Dickerson, Smitty and Hurts, if we get hit, it'll get real dangerous quick. Tell him I'm wrong, bro. Tell me if I'm wrong, bro. No, I mean, look, Tampa Bay's look. It doesn't mean that just because you fall behind you'll lose per se, Kivo, but I will say that falling behind to Tampa Bay is a lot different from falling behind to the Giants, falling behind to the Washington football team. It's a completely different threat, right? Because number one, they do have a good offensive line that they can run the football behind if they get a double-digit lead on you. So they can kind of do what we're good at doing. So, we do have to be kind of careful with that. I agree. You don't want this game to get to where you're like down 10 points and you're only, halfway through the first quarter. Eric said we might need to pick up more of these rugby players late in the draft or unsigned even. I think Malata and Stout can help a diamond in the rough translate. Matt Hatter said nobody giving us a chance against the Bucks. I think Hurts is going to ball out and we can run the ball down their throats. I think Hurts is an extension of the running game. It's a particular problem for the Buccaneers. The last time they played us, we had a much different identity, right? And it is true that, even with a guy like Miles Sanders, if he doesn't make, Sunday's game, Hurts does add explosion to the running game when you have guys like Boston Scott and Jordan Howard, which can give you a little bit more of the contact balance and a little bit more of the consistency between the tackles. Now, I will say this is a hard team to run through the tackles on. This is a very difficult matchup with Vita Vea at nose, running that nose, that zero shade or that 2-eye kind of technique there. Like it's going to be difficult to run there. No doubt about it. Whatever Howie signs in free agency is going to set the scene for the draft. Who do you see the Eagles going after in free agency? I agree with the principle of what you said there, Andrew, which is Howie likes to approach things by shoring things up in free agency to give them flexibility in the draft to get creative. Hopefully he sticks, sometimes we've gotten too creative and made mistakes, but I will say that when you're searching for somebody, you're far more likely to make a mistake. In terms of targets in free agency, I think Mike Williams has a connection back to the coaching staff. I definitely think we should look into maybe trying to maintain some of our own players to keep things consistent, right? Alex Singleton is up for a contract. I look at Jannard Avery. Jannard Avery's up for a contract. I look at a guy like Hassan Ridgeway. Hassan Ridgeway's up for a contract. I look at who else is up? Steven Nelson's up for a contract. We have guys that we can sign in-house, Andrew, that would kind of, depending on the price, price is very much the key here. Like, I like Steven Nelson. I do think Steven Nelson has helped us form a respectable defensive back core, but I'm not paying a certain price for, certain guys. I do think that we could focus on that and add a guy like a Mike Williams. I don't know that this is a particularly good class for safeties in terms of free agency when I say class. I don't know the free agent class at the safety position is necessarily there. I mean, I have to really look through the options and see if we got any young guys that could potentially come in here that maybe just haven't had a fair shake. Maybe they were highly rated draft prospects that just never really got an opportunity. But you can never rule out Howie going through the trade market. That's the thing. In my opinion, we need a young interior defensive lineman. We need youth on the outside. We need youth at linebacker. Although we do have some young guys, but we need a playmaker there. And we need youth in the secondary, especially at safety. We could use an extra corner, although we have like 6. My joke is we have 99 cornerbacks that we've traded or signed for over the duration of the season. But truth be told, we do have a lot of those young guys, but I don't know that we have any proven guys in the corner room. I don't know that we have any young guys in the safety room outside of Kevon Wallace and Marcus Epps, which Marcus Epps looks like a player. Kevon Wallace looks like a question mark. I don't know. I think those are big areas in need, right? I definitely think that we could use a boundary side, split end, X-aligned receiver. I definitely think that we got to make up our mind what we're going to do with Andre Dillard. What are we going to do with Isaac Seumalo? Like, what are we going to do with the depth of this offensive line? So, I mean, I definitely think there's a few areas that, we could be involved in trades ourselves. Maybe you trade Dillard for a piece at safety. Maybe, you could do things like that. Fly Park said, got to get the ball to Ridley. Don't know if offense as of yet is set up to get the ball downfield in the air. Well, I think Ridley's a good enough route runner where you don't have to necessarily push it vertically. I think Ridley can come underneath on crossers and things like that and present a really big target to throw to. But I think the main thing is that, we talk about getting the ball down the field, but these receivers need to get clean releases off the line, and they need to be able to attack corners, leverage in order not to get removed from reads too. And I think that's a part of some of the struggle. But yes, I agree, Fly Parks, that, Jalen Hurts still has some things he's got to work from in terms of his deep ball. His throwing base is definitely, it's not quite right. When they say he gets toesy and they say he gets heel clicky, they're talking about his throwing base. They're saying that he brings his feet together too close before he goes into that final stretch to throw the football. And he's got a bit of an elongated delivery, right? The ball, he kind of he'll dip his elbow a little bit, and he kind of brings the ball up and around as he releases. He's got some things he's got to clean up. But, I mean, he's made a lot of progress. I see him hanging tougher in the pocket. He seems to be keeping his eyes downfield. I still think there are times where he should be climbing and sliding where he ends up evading outward. But I think he's definitely made improvements there. We see him actually slide and glide and slide in the pocket now. Where before, you really didn't see him do that at all. So I do think that there's been improvements, and, he's learning to play on time with the offense a lot more. I think we see these improvements. And I think next year the thing is you got to work on those throwing mechanics. He's got to get that throwing mechanics right. What's good, Kiva? Bobby Murphy said, I wouldn't trade for Ridley unless they agreed to extend first, especially hearing Falcons want a first or second round pick for him. I'm not giving that high of a pick for a 1-year rental. I don't know, Bobby. I'd take a different approach to that one. I don't want Atlanta working any contract out because I feel like we're better at the contracts than they are. You get what I mean, Bobby? I would much rather deal with it. And I think that if you can get a guy in here, allow him to endear himself to the city, you stand a better chance of getting a favorable contract from him. Now, yes, you have a point that you can get burned in that. We're assuming that's going to happen. That doesn't always happen, right? Not everything works that way. But, T.O. got his extension, and then it kind of all went to crazy crap. But, we kind of did that with T.O. And Bobby, I should probably clarify. I know you've been around the game long enough to know that I'm not calling Calvin Ridley a T.O. type situation, but you get what I mean. Contractually, it is not necessarily what would happen after they get traded here. If we get hot, I got you, Kiva. I think you're too scared of Mike Evans per PFF. Slay limited him to 2 catches for 27 yards. We can beat them, boys. I believe in Avante and company, but we need to stop the run. Let me ask you a question, though, Dante, because this is where I think that kind of stuff can be misleading. Sure, 2 for 27 when Chris Godwin and Antonio Brown were on the field, so there was more people to spread the ball to. You get what I'm saying, Dante? He's going to definitely be one of the main targets in this game. Really has mental issues. I would not take a shot unless it's for a 4th rounder. I highly disagree, Matt Adam. You might have an issue with anxiety, man, but I think that's more prevalent in the league than a lot of people are realizing. I just think it's more acceptable now to talk about it. And instead of going out there and guys having these really bad games and people going, what happened? Like, why is this? I think they're more willing to talk about it and express it. And we got guys inside this locker room who suffered with the same thing, who have come back and been stronger in what they've done. And maybe you can look at that as a way of actually helping the young man and actually part of the whole thing about endearing him to the city. Kyler said, would you rather pick up Mike Williams or Calvin Ridley in free agency? I see Slay is trying to recruit Mike Williams. Kyler, I don't really look at it like that just because like everything's kind of in a vacuum. So if we're talking player to player, who's the better player? Calvin Ridley's a better player than Mike Williams. But it's not just a matter of like who's the better player. You know, Mike Williams is a free agency, so we know for 100% certainty he will be available as long as he is not re-signed by the Chargers, right? He's going to hit free agency. So there is the possibility of him being open. On the other end, we don't know. You know, it's all speculative if whether or not Calvin Ridley is going to be available or not. But if we're talking about who the player is, Calvin Ridley is the better player. And we're talking about who I think might fit a bigger need for the Eagles. You can make the argument they both do. I mean, Calvin Ridley's a very good route runner. He can separate. He can win at the NFL level. But Mike Williams is a split end boundary side X-aligned receiver, which is what I've been saying for probably about a year and a half now, almost 2 years. It's what the Eagles lack in this offense. You know, it's something that the Eagles haven't really had since Alshon. When Alshon started getting kind of beat up in that 2018 season, we kind of lost that. The Bull said, I hope penalties don't kill us this game. That's all I ask. That's a good point, the Bull. And I don't know if it will or won't, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's hard to say. We're playing against Brady, and he's going to get calls. Well, I think the thing that's been pointed out about Tampa Bay is not necessarily Brady getting calls. It's the fact that Bruce Arians' secondary and the rate at which they play man coverage, they've been holding on to receivers. And other teams have gotten calls in similar situations that it seems like Bruce Arians is able to sway the refs not to make the call on. That's really been kind of the big discussion point there. The last drop by JJ, I just cringed and was embarrassed for the kid. That was a drop and a flop. A drunk guy does at the beach trying to catch a ball. It was bad. It didn't look good on film, man. That's for sure. I think the X factor is Fournette. If we stop him, we win. Jalen Mills was a 7th round pick. Yeah, Jalen Mills was a 7th round pick, but to be fair, Jalen Mills had some stuff that was external to football that pushed his value down. He wasn't a 7th round graded evaluation in terms of the talent, to be fair, Mad Hatter. Dante said, I live in Richmond, and Kayvon, as much as I love my boy, I don't see, but this year's draft, we can really overhaul this defense. Yeah, it's hard to say. I don't know really what to make of Kayvon at this point. Kivo said, we're going to set them up in the run game, just like we did against Washington. Hit the outside edges early, then gash them up the middle. I'm almost sure we'll definitely have a lot of unscouted looks. We'll see. I mean, that's really on the coaching staff in terms of kind of the game plan that they come up with. Kivo, I mean, I hope you're right. I hope they got some stuff that they've been saving for the postseason, and it's going to be a lot different look. But we'll see. Philly Fan D said, we will be covering Gronk. Oh, who? Who will be covering Gronk? Maddox, who I love, doesn't have the size. Yeah, but Maddox will at least stay in phase with him, and Maddox will fight through the hands. But yes, I mean, yeah, he's not a big guy. More than likely, they're going to bracket him. They'll either bracket him with, a nickel corner with a safety over the top, or they'll bracket him with some kind of movement and motion piece from a linebacker who goes and drops back, like almost, kind of taking inside, outside. So he'll take the inside leverage. Avante will get up top and over high in terms of the outside leverage. That's normally what they do with a guy like that. So you'll either have Avante on inside leverage with the safety on the outside leverage over the top, or they'll take Avante, they'll play him off the line of scrimmage a little bit, put him on the outside in the leverage, and they'll bring in tight end. They'll bring a linebacker underneath on the inside leverage. It's probably what they'll do. They'll probably bracket him. Kivo said Hurts gets up on his toes like a ballerina and jumps into it on his deep passes. I don't know where he learned that. It's a lot. So some of it has to do with nervous energy, Kivo, to be quite honest. Some of it also has to do with the fact that he's not the tallest guy. But it also, more importantly, has to do with rhythm. A lot of us are taught to do that to stay in rhythm. And it's something like I was pretty bad at it too, if I'm being honest, Kivo. I bounced a lot in the pocket. And it's a lot of it has to do with rhythm, to be quite honest. Andrew said, can you see the Eagles trading down from 21 to bounce off cast of a third first rounder, maybe 2023 draft choice? Yes, I can see them trading one of those picks out of the first round. Absolutely. If anything, just because it's going to cost you, I've done this before, it's going to cost you like $8.7 million to sign 3 first-round picks. It's not exactly accurate because you have the rule of 51. I talked about this before, guys. You have to take $705,000, multiply that by 3, then subtract that number from that $8.7 million. So like I said, probably about $6 million or so, high fives, $6 million is what it's going to cost you to sign 3 guys. So you got to keep that into perspective here, and that they might trade back to gain more picks in 2023. But also has to do with how they rate some of these prospects. If they don't think that there's a lot separating 21 from 42, and there's somebody who wants to trade up for a quarterback or something, I could see them. I could see them making a deal. Dante said, yeah, I see your point on Mike, but they ain't playing, so obviously. You like the matchup against Slade. Granted, we need corners, but the game's got a lot more management. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'd much rather have to play who we're going to play this Sunday than have to play AB, Chris Godwin, Mike Williams, Gronk, Brayton. They got Howard. Yeah, Howard is out there for them at tight end. Like, I mean, they're loaded. So losing 2 of those guys is definitely it's a big, big help. Michael said, do you think we finally get a reliable big back this offseason? While I love Howard, he's very injury prone. I wanted Ramondre Stevenson, this draft. I think we should get Brian Robinson this draft. I mean, it depends on what the coaching staff wants. Like, when I looked at Jonathan Taylor, all I really paid attention to was like his numbers in terms of like yak, his yards after contact, the size of what he was. And I was like, oh man, like he's definitely like kind of an inside runner who's, he's a bit of a contact bounce back. He's a one-cut runner, and he's a contact bounce back. And then guys started pointing out to me, he is, Steve, but he's also a 4.38 40 guy at that size. And I was like, oh, I don't know that you can find those in every draft class. It just depends on what they want. You know what I mean? Like, I liked Ramondre Stevenson. I liked Trey Sermon. I liked a lot of these guys in this past draft. I thought there were a lot of opportunities to land contact bounce backs in the 2021 draft that we didn't really opt for. So I don't really know what to make of what they see as the needs. I don't know if that was because of Miles or what. So it's hard to project it, Michael. I really don't know what they're going to do per se, but if they really want that type of back, then yeah, I think they'll probably take a shot at getting them. Dante said, pay the rookies, you need the talent, but I do like the idea of Will Henderson. Yeah, I honestly think they're going to trade back one of those picks, to be honest. But, it is, Dante. It's hard to say, man. It depends on how they evaluate the draft. If they think that this draft is if they think that there's a drop-off between, let's say, like 18 and, like, say, I don't know, 18 and, say, 30, and then they think the next tier of guys is, like, from 31 to, like, say, like 50 is, like, just completely different class of guys, then they're probably not going to trade out of that spot. Unless they just think to themselves like, oh, yeah, we're going to get taken in this year's draft class, but 2023, you know what I mean? We might have something here. We might be able to get something special. We really like that draft. You got to factor all those things. It's hard to say, guys. It's really, really hard to say. I know they're 2 different players, but we need to follow the game plan. We used to shut down Kelsey. It's not like they have a Tyreek Hill on the outside to kill us. Slay should be able to handle Evans. Kivo, they don't have a player of that caliber in Tyreek Hill. Don't sleep on how fast their team speed is. They got speed, man. They got more speed than people might realize. Fly Park said, Gate City, speaking on Nelson, I feel he had a decent year. What are your thoughts signing him to a longer-term deal? All about the contract value, Fly Parks. I don't think he's had as good a year as some of the people are saying in the media. When you run his film, it's not quite as impressive, to be quite honest. But I do think that he's been part of a rotation at corner between him, Maddox, and Slay that's been the best. It's been the best, 3 combination of corners we've had in the city in quite some time. We have to probably go back to like when they had Brandon Boykin and guys like that. You know what I mean? Like we have to probably go back a little ways there to really put that in perspective of the last time we had a really solid corner play like that. I definitely think you can upgrade over Steven Nelson. So I would say it depends upon the value, Fly Parks. So what's the contract value? If it's similar to what we paid him this year, I would definitely bring him back at numbers like that, even if it's a slight escalation. Even if you got to pay him a little bit more, I would still bring him back. But if we're talking like over $6 million a year, over, say it gets up to like 8 to 10 million a year, I probably wouldn't do it. I probably wouldn't do it. I think it's hard to sign at that second corner at that contract value for what he is as a player. Matt Hatter said Godwin is 6'1" and 210 pounds. He's a free agent with 71% catch percentage in 5 years. He has 4,643 yards. We can get him on the cheap with his injury. Not necessarily, Matt Hatter. That's a big assumption to make. That's not necessarily true. Andrew said, Steven, if you were charged with drafting a running back for the Eagles this year, who would you select and when? I haven't gotten far enough in, Andrew, to player evaluations for the draft class to really slate a guy like that. As soon as the season ends, Andrew, I don't know how long you've watched the channel. I'm not really sure, Andrew. But that's when I really, I switched gears to doing that. I started evaluating. I will be building draft guides, written guides on the website. I'll be doing videos here. And then I will do a mock draft. I do mock drafts every year where I go over what I would do and I go over what I think the organization might do, Andrew. We'll go over team needs. I got a team of people that'll be working this year, Andrew, that's going to be kind of helping out behind the scenes, organizing graphics, organizing, kind of how I'm evaluating these guys. So we're going to definitely have some pretty interesting things when it comes to the draft this year. Generalities, if you want me to give you a generality, Andrew, just to give you something. The generality I would say is I think that they could use a contact balance back that has a little bit more explosion than Howard. You know what I mean? He doesn't have to be as good as Howard in terms of the contact, but generally speaking, a guy who's a contact balance back that has a little bit of more of explosion once he gets to the second level. Glizzy said, you think there's any chance Howie goes for Devontae Adams in free agency? I mean, I'm pretty sure he would want him. I mean, I don't know many organizations, Glizzy, that would not want Devontae Adams. That dude's a stud. But it's the money. I don't know that we'll have the money. But I'll say this, Glizzy. If the players are willing to get the player here, if the guys in your locker room are willing to get the guy here, and you got a guy like Howie Roseman as your GM, the one thing I'll say about Howie is he can make money. He can make money to make it work if the stars align. And the stars would very much have to align for that. But, there's so many moving parts of that it's hard to project. What's up, Miguel? How you doing, buddy? Said, I hope we play Greg Ward more in this game. I think they will. I definitely think you're going to see Greg Ward. It's been kind of elevating and projecting that way in the last few weeks. You see he's being a little bit more involved in the offense, especially on third downs and stuff. So I think you'll see him play. Jeremiah said, if we get Godwin, I'll be gobsmacked, depending on how he recovers. Yeah, the thing is that with AB gone from Tampa, you got to look into their cap situation. And they might just be to where they can't move the money enough to do that. But, there's going to be a lot of players in on it. There's going to be a lot of people in on it. Edwin Solana said, what's up, man? How you doing, buddy? Lamont, how you doing, buddy? He said, how do you evaluate Zach McPherson's play so far? What do you see as his role in the near future? It's an excellent question, Lamont. The way I evaluate his play, I have to go back to his college film just because there's just not enough snaps in the NFL to make really, really hardline, decisions about what he is. In his college film, he's a better mover than a straight line runner, right? So if you saw his 40 numbers, you'd be like, he's a mediocre corner in terms of speed, right? He's like a high 4.4 guy until a low 4.5 guy. I'd say he runs probably consistently on his best day. He probably runs in the 4.48 run, range. On his bad day, he's probably in the mid 4.5s. He's in that area in terms of an athlete, but he's a better mover. He's got good hip movement in terms of a corner. He's very good. I mean, he'll fight back to the football and he will try to steal the ball from a player. He will definitely try to jump routes. I will say where he gets himself in trouble is eye discipline. There are times that better quarterbacks will manipulate him because he gets a little too much into trying to peek into the backfield and see what the quarterback's doing. So he's got to get a little better with that in terms of his zone coverage. Kivo said facts. I wasn't talking about Hill's speed. I was just speaking on how that game plan would be a good one to duplicate and still not get burned like we did in that game. Yeah, they don't have a Tyreek Hill out. Mike Evans is a great football player, but they don't have a Tyreek Hill that can just, ball in his hands can just kill you like that in so many different ways. Rashad Perriman's size and speed concerns me a little bit matched up on Steven Nelson, but we have safety help there. So, I mean, I feel like that what Gannon does is the right thing to do in this situation. As much as we can't stand Gannon in the other situations, I think the way he runs his system is kind of the way you approach Brady. I just hope he uses some stunts and twists along the line on third down plays to try to make Brady uncomfortable, try to get through it and actually get that line caught off guard, because we do need to put a little bit of pressure on him, and you have to do it in a way to where you're not completely selling out your coverage. I do think you could technically bring a blitz, which, you know, a 5-man pressure is technically a blitz, but really and honestly, all you're trying to do is create one-on-one matchups. And I do think they could do some things from a 5-man front, to be honest. We'll see how they do. We'll see how they do in game, guys. My bad, Gleazy. I didn't read your comment, man. I apologize for that. Do you think Miles gets an extension? I don't know, Gleazy. I really don't know. I think there's a chance. I think there's definitely a chance, but I think it's going to come down to what his agent and what he wants to get paid. Because right now, I think everything's in the Eagles' favor. Because I don't think his contract value is probably going to get any lower than what it would be right now for the Eagles. You know what I mean? Like, I think unless he gets injured again, or you know what I mean? Like, I think it's the only thing that could really value his contract even more, which by that point, we really probably wouldn't want him. But right now is probably as low as you're going to get him. And I don't know what that number is. Now, I've been saying that if it's between the 12th and, 20th paid guy, somewhere between 12 and 20, if it's closer to 20, I'm probably going to give him a contract. If it's closer to 12, I'm at least going to consider that contract. Edwin said, you have to get one of the players from Georgia's defense to make it a successful defense. Jeremiah said, like and sub. Appreciate you, Jeremiah. Thank you, buddy. Miguel said, I'm tired of seeing Umbrella Man and Ragalore. What's up, Mariana? How you doing? Jose said, did you hear about the weather for the game? Supposed to be heavy rain, I think. Could end up being a rain-heavy game. I mean, it definitely would favor the Eagles, Jose, but, the thing with Florida weather, and I said this earlier in the live stream, is it changes so rapidly and so quickly. And, like, even a torrential downpour could only last for, 30 minutes in Florida, and then it'd be sunny for the rest of the day. So, Florida is very much unpredictable. Like, I heard someone say that it was like 60-some degrees there last week, and that they were projecting that, it could get below like 40 degrees, I heard at one point. But, Florida weather, it changes so quickly. It's hard to, you almost have to wait until the day of the game. You know what I mean? Cree said, eventually we have to address the center position. Do they have Kelsey's replacement on the roster, or should they address it in the 2022 draft? If so, who do you like in what round? Cree, you hit on a lot of points I brought up earlier in the live stream, which is I don't know how they feel about Landon Dickerson. Dickerson's got experience playing there, although I would keep him at left guard. Isaac Seumalo was a college center in that, he worked in that same camp during the 2016 draft with Carson Wentz. They were roommates, and that's why they drafted those two together, that Seumalo would eventually be the center here. They got Driscoll. Jack Driscoll has played center before. They got Nate Herbig, which, he's more of a backup. He's not your starter, but you get what I'm saying. They got a lot of guys on the roster who have played center. I don't know. I mean, Linderbaum in the first round, if you want to name. Linderbaum is a guy that's being comped a lot to be very similar to Jason Kelsey, but to me, it's not what Kelsey does from the movement standpoint. Kelsey is special when it comes to gap blocking. You pull a guy on sweeps and you're trying to get him out there on gap blocking assignments. Kelsey's special, don't get me wrong. But it's the things he does between the helmet, between his ears inside that helmet. Identifying, blitzes and sliding the line correctly. That's the things I can't project that any of these guys are going to be as good as Kelsey at doing. And that's a big part of what makes Kelsey, important, to the offense. And being that our front four gets a little pressure, do you think we will see Jannard Avery on the edge? I think you'll see some 5-man fronts. I think you'll definitely see some 5-man fronts. I mean, Fly Parks, I hope what they do is they use the A gap and B gap pressure with guys like Avery, with guys like Kerrigan. I thought that's what they were going to do with Kerrigan. I'm a little disappointed in the way that things have turned out this season, that they didn't do that with Kerrigan. I thought Kerrigan's a much better and much more effective stand-up pass rusher than hand-in-the-dirt 5 technique. And you take Avery, you take Kerrigan, and then you start applying that A-gap pressure. You start applying pressure to the B-gap. You disrupt them. You know what I mean? I would take the athleticism of Avery or Kerrigan on a guard, even though the guard's going to have a strength advantage all day long. I hope they do stuff like that, but I can't say, definitively Fly. You know how it is. Oh, it's all good, Creek. It's still an excellent question. Philly the podcast said, I promise you, it won't be a 40 out here. if it will, they'll shut the city down. Yeah. I don't think it will either. I'm pretty sure it won't in Tampa. It's too far south. Cree said, sorry, I missed when you addressed it earlier, Coach. It's not a big deal, Cree. It's still a great question, man. It's a great question. If Linderbaum's there, I'm taking him. Mad Hatter said. Dante said, is it worth trading back to get more picks? I think it's too much of a mini game. You go down our roster, and it needs to develop, not sold on the need to develop guys to build a team. It depends on how you look at it. Like, Dante, like every draft is different. I haven't gotten far enough in the evaluation yet, Dante, to say how deep this draft is. Like that's kind of the problem here. Is like I'm not deep enough in my evaluation of this current draft to say what I think the depth of the draft is. There's always some kind of depth here that you're dealing with, and I don't know where that stands currently. I don't know if it's there's like last draft. I said personally I thought there was 12 to 14 guys that I thought stood out above everybody else. And then I thought you had kind of a tier of guys from like 15 to about, I said like 36 or 40 that I thought were pretty much clustered together. I don't know. I don't know what the depth's going to be. I don't know how good some of these guys are going to be on the back end and stuff. So it's hard to say. Romy Bravo coming in with the $4.99 super chat. Thank you so much for the super chat, buddy. I appreciate that, man. He said, what are your thoughts on Fulgham? Do you think he returns next year? The player I like a lot, man. Romy, I really liked his game a lot. I thought that he gave you what we were missing from the offense this year, which is a guy that goes and attacks the football. From a maturity perspective, I'm confused on what he is and in terms of that. Like, you only know what's reported. I don't know the young man personally. I only know that they say that he suffers with issues of maturity, and that's why teams are letting a very talented player kind of off of their rosters, not playing them, not really dealing with the problem. I can say that I thought when he was on the field, I thought he was pretty good. He had a pretty bad camp. But, to be quite honest, man, like I probably would have still kept him on the roster. I probably would have still given him a look, but there must be something else going on there where they didn't want to play along with it, I guess. But, I mean, I wouldn't rule anything out. It depends on if the coaching staff still has some sort of an affection towards him. What's up, Caleb? He said, it's Kelsey's speed off the ball and consistency that is by far the best asset. Plenty of people know football. Plenty of people don't know football with that get off. Yeah, but I also say, though, Caleb, like sliding your protection is a harder job than people think. Sometimes you can get away with your quarterback making that slide for you. Some guys have their quarterbacks do it and not their center, but Kelsey is just like he's next level with that kind of stuff. Jose said, I wish we had Davion Taylor for this game. That guy has a lot of speed and strength. Yeah, I agree. It kind of stinks that we've missed on him. Kelsey off the ball and in space is I think you meant to say best there I've seen. The way he explodes through contact and consistently snatch noses are crazy, and his pass pro is great. Yeah, I mean, he gives you full effort down the field. Kivo said our key players we need to outright ball are Kelsey, Maddox, TJ, Milton, McLeod, and Hurts. Not a bad list of guys, man. Michael said, if by some stroke of bad luck we don't bring in a safety this offseason. Sorry, Michael, might help if I pull your comment up. If by some stroke of bad luck we don't bring in a safety this offseason, would you be good with Epps at free safety full time? I think he's a solid player. I like him, man. I don't hate that. I think Epps could be a free safety. It's not the most ideal of situations, but I think there are far worse fates to have happen, to be honest, Michael. I think you could do worse than Epps, to be quite honest. If you'd asked me this 2 years ago when we first signed him, I might have been like, I don't know about that. You know what I mean? But, yeah, right now I think he's definitely developed. And I don't think Denard Wilson is getting enough credit for what he's done. Like, these guys love Denard Wilson as our secondary coach. He's been a hot name in terms of becoming a future, defensive coordinator one day. And I think he's done a pretty outstanding job here in Philadelphia. Cree said, Coach, do you think that the Birds have serviceable backup tight ends? Would this be a position to look at in the upcoming draft or look at an undrafted rookie free agent? I think that it yeah, I can see that standpoint. I think if Tyree Jackson doesn't suffer a ACL injury this late in the season, they probably feel pretty good about Tyree Jackson going forward. I think they love the versatility that Jack Stahl brings. I don't know that they're going to spend a premium pick on a tight end, because they just signed Dallas Goedert to that big time contract. You got, two guys that I think both of those dudes were undrafted rookie free agents. One guy's a converted quarterback, It's just a matter of how they feel about Tyree Jackson. They got another guy that he's decent, Look, I have no problem with keeping Richard Rodgers on this team for a couple more years as kind of a deep roster guy, practice squad, call up guy. Like, I like Richard Rodgers, man. I think he's been quite good for the Eagles. Infamous 2K said, we're better than the Colts. Mad Hatter said, yeah, Epps reminds me of Quentin Michael. Howie has 8 draft choices left after the first round. Do you see him moving up to take advantage of falling talent in this draft? I hope so, Andrew, but I was frustrated with Howie last year that he kept trading back and he didn't target guys and go forward. Now, I will say his first 3 picks, he deserves credit. Devontae Smith was a good pick. Landon Dickerson was an outstanding gamble at a pick. Milton Williams has turned out to be a really, really good pick for him. Now, look, Milton Williams is not a completely refined player. He's got some growth to go in run defense. But I also don't think that they completely tapped into Milton Williams' potential. I don't think they're fully using that young man's ability to rush the passer. I think that he should be kind of a Where's Waldo across that defensive line. I think that they should be doing a little bit more creative things with Milton Williams personally. So I'll give him credit that those first 3 picks were really well, but I did think that as many picks as we had in the 2021 draft, I still feel like you could have gotten Milton Williams. I still feel like you could have gotten, a guy like, Landon Dickerson and still packaged some of these picks. Scratched out the Mcpherson 4th rounder. Nothing against Mcpherson. He's got a shot to be good, but it's an unknown. It's far from a certainty. But I feel like we could have gone up into the draft and targeted the guys. Some of those dudes got hurt, though. To be fair, some of the guys I would have targeted, they got hurt this year. So we don't know where they're going to be following this season. But one guy that I liked a lot, he got hurt too, Washington. They picked up Benjamin St. Just, and I was pretty high on Benjamin St. Just. I liked Ifeanyi, a young man from Syracuse. I was pretty high on him. There was a few guys I thought were kind of these guys you could have maybe gotten on the back end of the second into the early 4th, somewhere between the end of the second into the early 4th is where I thought they would fall in the draft, and I felt like they could have gotten a few of those guys, and that's just a couple of guys. There's more on the list than just that, but I felt like he could have been more aggressive in that particular instance. What's up, Show Enough? How you doing, buddy? Appreciate you being here, man. The Gambling Hippie said, just jumping in, is there specific people in the front office that you see being poached by other organizations? Yeah, so what I kind of talked about earlier, the Gambling Hippie, I named a few names. So Catherine Reich and Brandon Brown got the interviews with the Vikings. Brandon Brown in particular scares me that he could get poached. Brandon Brown is kind of like, he's a Howie Roseman that actually played football. He's got a Juris Doctorate, so he's a lawyer. He's written for a publication before. He played football. He was a 4-year letterman at Fordham University as a defensive back. He spent time as an actual real scout. And I wouldn't be shocked if he's, because normally your DOPP has dual roles. One hand, they scout NFL rosters. DOPPs do. On the other hand, they also help with contracts with players. I wouldn't doubt if Brandon Brown doesn't not only have the elements of doing things with player personnel in terms of scouting NFL stuff, because he used to be the director of pro scouting here in Philadelphia, but I also wouldn't doubt if he doesn't also crunch numbers and help with that side of things. The other guy I talked about is Alec Calabi. He's been in Philadelphia his entire career. He's the analytics guy. If teams are into analytics and the number crunching guys and the suit and ties over the hardcore football guys, I'll give you hardcore football guy would be Tom Donahue versus an Alec Calabi type. It's not a fair comparison because Tom Donahue is a dinosaur. He's been in the league since, forever. He was there with Bill Cowher in Pittsburgh. But nonetheless, you know what I'm saying? Like there's different styles. And I thought Alec Calabi might be a guy that we would hear by now getting more noise around him. Andy Weidel used to be Joe Douglas's right-hand man. He's definitely one of those football guys, the Tom Donahue side of things, right? He's a guy that was a regional scout for the Baltimore Ravens for a while, followed Joe Douglas to Philly. I think he was the director of our college scouting for a while. No. Ian Cunningham was the director of college scouting, but Andy Weidel he's a big name. I'm surprised we haven't heard anything. Then Ian Cunningham would be the other guy. Came here with Joe Douglas, spent time as a scout. He's more of a football guy. He was the director of pro scouting before he became this. There's 2 DOPPs here, director of player personnel. I'm surprised he hasn't got more run. And then the other guy I talked about was Casey Weidel, who's related to Andy Weidel. Casey Weidel is the guy who sets up our draft boards. It's not that he's the only person who sets the draft board, but he's the guy that has the overview aspects of it. Casey Weidel does. That's what your director of college scouting does. So I'm surprised those guys haven't gotten more run across the league. When did Sweat get sick? Hope it's not. Yeah, I know what you're saying, Unspoken. I hope it's not that either. Should they bring back Derek Barnett and Brandon Graham? Brandon Graham Cree is still technically under contract. So I probably would let him play the contract out. Derek Barnett, that's a tougher one, man. It depends on the valuation. I'm not paying Derek Barnett the $10 million he was due this year. I don't think he's earned that. Ruben said the Eagles are about to trade Jalen Hurts for Deshaun Watson. No, they're not. That man's got so many legal hurdles he's got to cross before that can happen. That ain't happening anytime soon. I think Howie is addicted to draft day trading. I believe he will use one of the first rounders to trade down or to trade for a next year's first. Yeah, I mean, he is. You're right. And to give Howie credit, he's done a good job. He did show some testicular fortitude to move up to go get Carson. Carson was the highest drafted FCS level player in history at the time. And, give him credit for that. At the time it was definitely a big move. Showing up said facts, Gate City. Williams along with Fletcher should be moved all over the line. That in itself beats a double team. Exactly. Unspoken said, I'm hoping Williams is everywhere Sunday. Yeah, me too. What is the one position that you think we need that would make us the greatest threat and or clear front runner to get back to the bowl? I think like I said, guys, I think it's more than one position. I don't think one position is going to move the needle in any direction. But I do think that we need young depth along the defensive line. We got Josh Sweat, who's a nice young player. But Derek Barnett's playing on his 5th-year option. There's a good chance he's not back. I'm not going to say it's 100%. Things can happen, but it's unlikely he comes back. I look at Fletch. Fletch is 31. This upcoming 2022 season might be his last. Javon Hargrave does have a decent big-size contract. He might be here for a few years, so you can kind of include him with that kind of contract. Milton Williams will be here for a while. He's a fixture along the line. I still feel like they can use edge rushers. I still feel like they can use one more interior defensive lineman. I think that they need linebackers. They need an impact player at linebacker. They need a Darius Leonard or an Anthony Barr. What Anthony Barr was for Minnesota forever, what Darius Leonard has been for the Colts, they need that guy. They need a safety. They need an impact player at safety. You look at what I can't remember the young man's name. Not the guy that played with Anthony Harris in Minnesota. His name's slipping my mind right now, guys. But we need an impact safety, to be quite honest. The young man that's with the Chargers now, he's an impact safety. Like we need that kind of player. We need somebody that can be an impact safety on this team, and we can use a boundary side receiver. An X-aligned boundary slide. The guy that plays on that, on that boundary. We need that guy. We definitely need that guy in this offense. I agree. I would be getting Milton Williams on the field more by playing him at defensive end sometimes. Why not? Kerrigan and Barnett have been disappointments. The Eagles are going to get eliminated in the first round of the playoffs. We'll see, my guy. There's still a game to be played. Do you think that Jonathan Gannon will get any looks from another organization as a head coach? It's possible, Cree. It is possible he gets more looks. That's very, very possible. A sincere review, Harrison Smith. Exactly. Thank you. That's exactly what I was thinking of. Yeah. Slay is actively recruiting Mike Williams. Be nice. I'd like to have Mike Williams here. And Mike Williams does have some familiarity with Steichen. And I think he even had a year underneath Sirianni, to be honest, with LA. So, I mean, that would be nice. It'd be a nice pickup, man. I think Jalen Hurts got an underrated arm and still haven't reached the ceiling. Yet trade him talks I don't like. Yeah, Philip, I mean, people are people, man. I played center in college at Charleston Southern. High school. A couple of years ago, You made me want to do O-line content for Philly. I really appreciate you. Great info and work. Caleb, you should come on the channel sometime, man. With Jalen played collegiately at Virginia State, Jalen Williams. I would love to pick y'all's two minds about the line, about offensive line play. You should come on the channel sometime, Caleb. I'd love to have you on. Jose said, what aspects of Jalen Hurts needs to improve on to prove he can be our franchise quarterback? Honestly, like it's tough because I don't know what the front office's opinions are. Jose, I can't predict what our front office is going to do. In terms of you're asking like what's the biggest area he needs to work on? Look, I thought going into this season, the biggest area he needed to get better at was playing on schedule with the offense, right? When teams bring pressure, you need to know how to see the pressure and to know how to basically fill the blitz with the football, replace the defender with the football. And I think he's done that this season. I think he's gotten better at stepping up into the pocket, what they call gliding, sliding the pocket. I think he's gotten better at that. Now I think the biggest issue with him is he's got to learn how to throw receivers open. And he's got to develop that deep ball. He's got to throw the ball with more anticipation. Don't wait for guys to get open. Anticipate it's going to happen and throw it there and get them there so that way you can hit guys in stride and get bigger plays. I think that's the biggest areas of his games that it has to be improved upon. Nothing wrong with Hurts' arm. It's the struggle to read the field at times. He fixes that, he would be a top 5 in the NFC. I think he's trending the right way, personally, showing up. And then Weidel cash flow. What's good, man? What 3 backs would you bring in Sunday? I mean, look, if Miles is healthy enough to go, I'd still play Miles, although I'd probably limit his snaps just because I know they're going to swipe at that hand. They're going to go for that hand. If Jordan Howard is 100% go or at least 90%, Howard would be my feature back. Then I would have, after Howard, I'd probably do Boston Scott, and then I would probably honestly do Jason Huntley as my change of pace guy. And then I would try to play Kenneth Gainwell maybe to get some production out of the slot. I'd use him more as a receiver in this game personally. I don't know that they're going to do that, though, to be honest. Andrew said, will there be a linebacker and cornerback that the Eagles should or could sign in free agency so that Howie could concentrate on the best player available in his draft? Hard to say, man. Anthony Barr is available. I don't know that they're going to let him walk from Minnesota. But then again, Minnesota's changing schemes potentially. They might be a completely different scheme next year. Anthony Barr, it's about the value. I'm not paying Anthony Barr the money I would have paid him 5 years ago. But if that guy can come over here on a very favorable veteran contract, he is far better than what we have in the linebacker. That's the type of Sam linebacker we needed. That's why when Jamie Collins got released early in the year, he's not Anthony Barr, but he's built similarly. They're the same type of build at linebacker. I would have gone after Jamie Collins if I was the Eagles. But luckily, Jannard Avery came around. I don't think there's really a true impact guy, to be honest, Andrew. But we'll see. I'll definitely grade some tape on some guys that may be lesser known. There's the one dude from Tennessee. He plays. He's a middle linebacker. His name's slipping my mind, but I do know he's a free agent. The young man from Tennessee. He'd be a really good football player. My guy, good to see you again, grinding. Hey, appreciate it, Michael. Trying to do the best I can, man. Show enough said I would definitely limit Miles snaps. Me too, man, because they're going for that arm. They're going to try to hit that hand as many times as they can. Kyler said, we got to let Hurts develop. People want him to be Mahomes without giving him time to improve. Yeah, exactly, Kyler. You're right. All right, guys, it's been an hour and 48 minutes. Y'all got me again to where I was supposed to be off here like, I don't know, almost 20 minutes ago. I appreciate y'all tuning in, guys. Just real quick, guys, I do have merch up. I have some of the logo printed shirts. I did do a 5-panel, like kind of trucker style ball cap is up. Coffee mugs are up. Water bottles up. Great news. Jayon Brown. Sorry, guys. Sorry, I didn't mean to disrupt that. Jayon Brown is exactly what I was thinking of, Colin. I will say that I have actually started. I have the rough draft completed on the quarterback journal. You guys wanted me to make a journal for next season, so that way when you guys watch games or even this offseason when you're grading tape, you can look at a journal and say, okay, all right, these are good notes I can take. I got that template done, guys. I actually completed it. Now it's just a matter of making it, somewhat pleasant to the eyes. So that's going to be up on the site real soon. I might publish it through Amazon. I might go through Kendall Publishing. It'll be a physical, like 6x9 journal you can keep in your pocket, guys. So that will be done very soon. So I came through with what I said I was going to do, guys. I definitely have that completed. It's just a matter of getting it more aesthetically pleasing. So That's coming up, guys. Look forward. I'll announce it, and I'll definitely put it in community post and all that stuff so you guys know it's there. Colin, Jayon Brown is exactly what I was thinking of. Thank you so much, man, because sometimes it's hard to think when you're doing all this at the same time, man. I appreciate that. I'm going to answer a few questions before I jump off, guys, and I'm going to jump off. What will Gannon do to improve in the red zone? We look porous inside the 20. Got to bring pressure at times, man. And I know it's hard to bring pressure against Brady because he eats pressure up, but you just got to move that guy off the spot or else he's going to kill you. Matt Hatter said, great show, Coach. Thank you, buddy. I appreciate that, man. Unspoken said, Gainwell in the slot on Sunday. Yes, pick this man up, Sirianni, as a consultant. Thank you, man. I would love to work with Sirianni. He's my guy. Philip Preston said, great show. Thank you, guys. All right, y'all. I appreciate y'all so much, and I'll see you guys on the next video.